Hey everyone, God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. I'm going to talk a little quiet because I do have a tenant in my house who's probably still sleeping, but I think my volume is pretty quiet on my videos anyways, but if you put in your headphones, you turn up the volume, you should be able to hear what I say. That being said, I'm really grateful for my 41 or 42 subscribers that I have. Value each one of you. When I see sometimes my videos get 22 views, sometimes they get 5 views, sometimes they get 150 views. It really just depends. And so, like, even if I get 1 view, like, I'm thankful for that person who sees my video, and just pray that it's helpful. And like, I don't want to be trying to advertise myself or tell people like, oh, share my videos, I want to get more views, I want to get, so anyways, this video is going to be about all of that discourse on Jesus's teaching on the Mount of Olives in the end of the book of Matthew, right before Jesus's arrest. He is brought onto, actually, you know what, my storage might run out, so we'll see how long I get to talk about this stuff. But basically the context is Jesus just left the temple. He was just teaching in the temple courts, and throughout that time, his last visit to the temple, in the other synoptic gospels, you have a clear picture of all the things that happened to Jesus while he was in the temple, all the conversations that he had both with Pharisees and with disciples. But in Matthew, it comes right after he's having his speech on the 7 woes, where he's calling out all the hypocrisy of the scribes and the Pharisees and the lawyers. He's basically just giving an overview of the mentality of hypocrisy, self-righteousness, greed, false religion, empty worship, and all of these things. And then he leaves, and I imagine that Jesus is not very happy at this point. He's walking away, and his disciples, this is speculative, but his disciples say as he's leaving, hey, Jesus, look at that temple and its buildings. Aren't they beautiful? And Jesus says, I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Of course, Jesus understood, because he knows the future. He understood that temple was going to be destroyed. So that saying that he said was fulfilled in 70 AD. Under Titus, the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, and that was an awful thing. So then his disciples hear him, and I think it's a little later in the story, the way it works out in Matthew. Jesus is later on the Mountain of Olives, and his disciples come up to him privately, and they say, what are the signs of this, and what will be the signs of your coming and of the end of the age? So they ask 2 questions. The first is specifically about the temple. When will these things happen? And the second is about the second coming. When will be your coming in the end of the age? So one is fulfilled within that generation, in 70 AD, the destruction of the temple, and the other will be fulfilled at some point in the distant future. And Jesus' teaching that follows intertwines both the partial fulfillment in the destruction of the temple and the distant fulfillment of the second coming in the future. And so that's how the story's moving. And then Jesus begins with saying something very clearly, and I think a lot of people gloss over this part, and sometimes I have when I read this section. He says, be careful that nobody leads you astray, it says in the ESV, or nobody deceives you, it says in the NIV. So to be deceived is to be led astray. And to be led astray, you have to submit to a leader, a ruler, to lead you somewhere. And to be astray means you're lost, right? So Jesus says, don't be deceived. the original deceiver, Satan, in the garden, deceived Adam and Eve. We fell because of that. So the first sign of the coming of the end of the age will be a deception. That's very strong. And he says, false prophets, false Christs will arise and will deceive many. And indeed, it says in 1 John, indeed many antichrists have come. Of course, there is the one man who is the Antichrist, and then there are multiple antichrists. There's an antichrist spirit that